Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Wanted to give maybe a quick high-level overview about this conversation that we're about to have in this session. Give a little brief introduction for everyone, but I'm actually really excited for this session. You know, since the early days of Bitcoin and blockchain technology, Dallas has been a host to a number of enthusiasts very eager to understand and discuss the potential of blockchain technology. So over the years, this community has evolved and grown, and it spans across the entire DFW Metroplex, and it spans many groups. So we wanted to take this session as a way to provide insight into that community and how we will continue to grow and all kind of work together. So the moderator of the session is going to be Lacey Shrum. She's a lawyer, entrepreneur, coder, badass, and has been a member of the community for a very long time. She's a founder of SmartKX and as well as an attorney at Velo Wood. On the panelist side, we have Stephen Ellis. Stephen has over 10 years behind him in terms of research, strategy, and applications of different types of emerging technologies. In his past, he served as a CTO for Plymouth AI, as well as the director of the North Texas Blockchain Alliance. Currently, Stephen serves as a board of advisor for the Cyber Law Consortium, as well as an advisor for the Vision Creative Solutions. He's also an independent contractor still in the space. Next, we have Lee Brasher. Lee is an executive director for the Institute of Global Engagement at Dallas Baptist University. He's a faculty member that is teaching international relations and blockchain courses. Lee has an instructor's certificate from IBM for blockchain solution, and he's also the founder of the Texas Blockchain Committee. He also serves as a board of director, part of the Texas Blockchain Council. And one of the most notable things is that he's also a captain in the U.S. Army. So thank you for your service, Lee. So with that,
I'm related to blockchain, but yeah.
No, but it's very important. Honestly, thank you for your service. And so with that being said, Lacey, go ahead and please take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Hamza, for having us and setting this up. I know that most people, if you've participated in Dallas Startup Week, it is a tremendous amount of work by really the people behind the scenes putting it on. So thank you so much, Hamza. You are an excellent producer. And I just really appreciate you letting me moderate this panel. And Stephen and Lee, thank you for being here and answering questions. I think there's a lot of really excited people in the space who want to know not only about blockchain, how do they get more involved. I've been sort of watching the other presentations earlier, and there are a lot of questions like, how do we get involved? And I think that's really exciting. So I want to talk about just a little bit of history, how you got into the space. Maybe we'll start with you, Stephen. How you got into the space, what interests you in blockchain, cryptocurrency, and really why you're here and still going through that, being part of cryptocurrency and blockchain even through this crypto winter.
Yeah, I guess my first introduction to blockchain was pretty simple. It was Bitcoin and Litecoin. This is going to be back 2011. So like I was doing a couple of media projects. One of them was a music blog. I'm a broadcaster by training from college. And so I was still working in that space. And I had a friend of mine who helped me on some projects. I was like, hey, there's this cool thing where you plug up some computers and then it runs a couple of programs and it creates these things called Bitcoin. And I was like, that sounds odd, but let's check it out. And like, I've been a gamer my entire life. So my first correlation to that was Second Life. It has its own currency. World of Warcraft has its own currency. Most games nowadays have their own currency. Back then it wasn't as common, but I was like, okay, there's going to be something here that people are going to care about, even if it's just a small community. So it's worth checking out. So that progressed to learning that, more about the technology stack and like its roots and like the digital gold movement in the 80s. And what really excited me was that it was infrastructure heavy at that time. So like, you know, being a Bitcoin miner, you're going to get these machines and you're going to plug them up. And like, I mean, there's probably no like technologist / computer nerd that's not enamored with the idea of having a room full of boxes that are all humming and doing something cool. So, and fortunately, my roommate was one of those people, and so he was like, yeah, let's do this. So we formally, I would say, got into it around 2013, where for anyone that's familiar with that time, the Antminers were just coming out. So this is the Antminer S1. It's this tiny little box that's like, you know, looks like it fell off the back of a truck somewhere. And we bought a bunch of them, plugged them into our apartment, and, you know, like we were off to the races. And this was, at that point, you could get a Bitcoin per week.
Was your electricity paid for by the apartment complex, or?
No, actually, so we were paying our own electricity. But yeah, I mean, we also got into that. We're looking for like, you know, the best electricity rates. But at that point, we kind of didn't even care about the electricity because we were very quickly paying rent and electricity and everything else with this. So that was kind of exciting. And so it enabled me to do a few things that I wanted to do entrepreneurially. So like I was super into coffee. So like I bought partner ownership in a coffee shop and like ran that for a little bit, and then kind of went through the whole progression of figuring out that industry and while keeping up with it. And so then Ethereum came out, and we got into that and did the same thing, you know, bought all the computers, set it up, started mining it. Similar to Zcash, there was one night I spent up when Zcash first launched. I spent the entire night downloading new miners, compiling them, running them to see if they were more stable than the previous one by like 20, 30 minutes. And then watching, I think that one launched at like 5,000 and watching it go all the way down to 500. This is very like edge of your seat type interesting game. And then like concurrent with me deciding not to be in coffee and more people being interested formally in blockchain. Because for a while, like there were people that you would talk to in the starter community, like we'd all meet at the deck, and like somebody would be like, oh, you're into drones and stuff. You know anything about this Bitcoin thing? And I was like, yeah, here's a picture of my mines. And they'd be like, oh, cool. And we'd just all be in the corner like talking about it. No one was really like admitting that they were part of the blockchain, but they're like, hey, I know those people over there, and that's one of the people, but you know, it was this underground thing. And then 2016, everyone all of a sudden was like, we're going to do panels and talks on this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. Who's going to do them? And they're like, I don't know, who knows anything about this? And then that's when all of us kind of were like, oh, we're the people that know something about this. So one day over at the Jewel, Cody had sent a message to say, hey, everybody, we should get together and talk about this. So I remember Cody was there, Cole was there. I know I'm forgetting some people. But there was a lot of faces that you would see on a regular basis that showed up to all the other events. So we all came together and said, we should put together this organization. Let's call it the North Texas Blockchain Alliance. And so it was really ad hoc. We kind of jumped into it just to kind of see what would happen. And then Cody, like we moved over to WeWork and got an office there and started organizing learning events and presentations and just kind of following along the space, and people were super hyped. So like as people would ask more questions, we'd funnel them into a session to kind of explain that. So like we did a showcase for explaining ICOs back when before ICOs were as crazy as they were, and then a little bit after everyone kind of got them as common knowledge. So this would have been when the BAT ICO happened. So we went through and did 15 different talks on here's the different ICOs, here's what they mean, you know, why is this important? And we had 175 people show up, and we were expecting like 30. So it was pretty nice to see. And so then that progressed, and as that progressed, the community, you know, kept getting bigger. And then that's where I met you guys. And then I left the NTBA as the director to formally work on Plymouth AI and kind of focus on the combination of blockchains and AI, because for me, I was really looking a lot more of the data that's being collected through blockchains, because everyone was still debating, like, is the transaction throughput high enough for you to do something on this? Or companies going to adopt this? And I was like, it doesn't really matter to me if they do or do not, because this 10 years of data collection on human interactions with transactions is going to be important in the future. So whether or not it's fast enough to do something on it If you download a blockchain and have an AI analyze it, you still got the best raw economic, data set for people's actual interactions. So that's where I still see that as a future progression of where this will be useful, whether or not in the short term it makes people a lot of money. So
Yeah. So one of the things that you highlight that I think I really love about the community, both here in Dallas and online, is this idea that people just love to continue to learn. I have a very formal education, and then I have my blockchain and crypto education, and I would say both are equally important. There's sort of this underlying theme with everyone that it is just really cool to learn and be out there on the forefront of things that are changing and continue to understand and question. There's a lot of questioning that goes along with this, why things are the way they are. And I think that makes us better as individuals, regardless if we're involved in this world or not. So, Lee, I want to give you a chance to tell your story. You sort of came in at the same sort of where Stephen left off. Tell your story, and I want you to include your podcast and the work that you've done there, which is really important.
Yeah, thanks, Lexi. Contrary to most, I did not come into blockchain through crypto. I think that's most people's journey. But I actually came in through academia. I was researching property rights in 2017, and this since then has been continues to be my main area of research. And I uncovered blockchain-based property registries. And once the philosophical and economic advantages set in, I was hooked on blockchain. And so I dove in through, it's a tangential path, but that's how I dove in. I got involved with the NTBA a few years ago, right as it was slowing down, probably around the time that Stephen left to do Plymouth AI. And then several of us from the NTBA used that momentum to create what we call the Dallas Blockchain Network. We had a podcast. We still have a podcast. We have recorded about 20 episodes with predominantly Dallas area blockchain founders, CEOs, subject matter experts in 2019. And then we would meet periodically before it was pre-COVID, but in the year preceding this one, we would meet once a month to talk about the community and where we needed to go. A lot of times we met at Hedera Hashgraph one time. The other times we met at what is that place? Brian Chamberlain's place, Capital Factory.
Yeah,
Capital Factory. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Cool.
Yeah, that's how I got into the space.
So, I want to see what we've sort of skipped through here. So you created the Texas Blockchain Council. It has a couple different pieces that I want to get to, but I want to talk about why is this important? Why is Dallas important in this story? Austin gets a lot of the credit from a technology standpoint, from really the movers and shakers in anything having to do with technology. And Dallas is sort of seen as this older, slower moving, more conservative approach. So how are you addressing that? And then what does Dallas have to offer in this space that really sets us ahead of not just other cities in Texas, but other states as a whole?
Yeah, I'll jump on that first, and then Stephen, you can come in behind me and add some color and add some insights. And so Dallas, it's an incredible city for the sheer volume of commerce and GDP relative to Austin. It's actually larger, much larger. The banking industry, the energy industry are huge here. And so as we see these blockchain use cases really materialize in various industry verticals, we realize, okay, this is not going to be just siloed to crypto or, DeFi, or it's going to diverge into a bunch of different industries. And so I think the sheer amount of economic activity in Dallas is the main reason why Dallas and Houston are on the map in the state of Texas and blockchain. I think the reputation, so there was some information asymmetry between the people who knew, like at the NTBA and elsewhere, who were technologists and understand this technology, and then the incumbents in traditional industry who were only getting information from the media. And at that time, the last several years, that's been pretty negative. It's been Silk Road, it's been ICOs, it's been all this stuff. And so we really saw the need to, and I think all of us saw this, is to change the narrative and to educate people who are just in traditional industries like banking and supply chain and what have you, so that they don't have this bad taste in their mouth when they first start thinking about blockchain. So when they're presented with a blockchain project by somebody in their company or a consultant or something, they have a positive connotation in their mind going in. So Stephen, what would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd also add on. So we have the third largest market for data centers and digital infrastructure in the country. So that was a big reason why I think a lot of the stuff took off initially, was because so much was centered in the infrastructure side. There were so many people that got in to it either through crypto or through mining, or because they were running a node or something like that. And being able to have a data center within 20 minutes of you that will sell you cheap space for $100 a month, like that's kind of invaluable. The other side that I've seen is that Dallas has a lot of CapEx heavy technology companies. So these are like your telcos. These are going to be like your cell phone operators, that kind of stuff. And the people that come out of those communities tend to understand that, or they tend to link capital investment and technology together, as opposed to in the Austin scene, a lot of it is software based or app based. And so they tend to think, okay, since it's digital, I don't have to pay for it until I start making money. So there's a lot more deficit minded entrepreneurial activity from Austin side, because that was what was popular. You know, like you think 2010, 2013 and 14, everything was centered around Facebook style companies, and everyone was trying to be the Uber of whatever, and it's all digital distributed properties that were very, very light on infrastructure costs and high on marketing and acquisition. So Dallas being a little bit more understanding of something that has a physical presence, blockchain definitely made sense there, and created people that were willing to take more risk in that direction. There's a lot of wildcatters here. Like they're not specifically in oil, but they are definitely with that mindset. And so when they see something that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy a building and throw a bunch of computers, or I'm going to stand up an office and just try this new thing, that's not as scary as, or that's not as frowned upon as it would be in another situation like Silicon Valley. So I think that's a lot of the strength. I think a lot of the learning curve comes from the traditional finance component being so strong. So you have access to capital, but you have access to capital in a specific way. And it wasn't, like Lee said, the narrative was so negative for a while that it was very hard to put those two together. I think now it's a lot easier, because part of what we were able to do with the NTBA and other people was to change the narrative and show how it was similar to the other strengths that DFW had. It's like, hey, when you're mining, you're technically kind of being an oil rig. So like these are things that you can understand. And then eventually that helps change the narrative with the banking industry, because someone that they trust for a long-standing family office relationship or something is coming in with this idea, not just some random person off the street. And so we had access to a lot of regional banks and sub-partners that were going to take more risk than like the big guys. Because for a long time, you had a Chase account, you connected to Coinbase, they would cut you immediately. Whereas you go to Frost Bank and say, hey, I need to set up a business, for this thing. And they say, okay, well, that looks okay. I mean, all the paperwork's in order. We don't know what you're doing, but let's go. So,
yeah, sorry, I have some background noise, so I got to put on mute there. Yeah, I think, so you bring up a really good point that I think is a good pivot. The Texas Blockchain Committee is a lobbying group. I want you to talk about that. I want you to talk about what you're doing there, and then really what the idea that a blockchain company has difficulty getting a bank account is crazy to most people. But in fact, it's very prevalent. You saw this a lot with Caitlin Long in Wyoming. This is one of the things that she's really advocated for, is opening up some regulation to make it easier to innovate. So Lee, can you talk about a little, like, what from a regulatory process are you looking at that is holding up blockchain development and how you're addressing that with the committee.
Sure. Yeah. So just from the outset, there's two organizations. One is the committee, so Texas Blockchain Committee, which is a PAC. That's really advocating on the election side with the legislators, and then the council, which is an industry association. It's a nonprofit industry association. And on that side, we're really doing the education, the research on the actual public policy front. And so most of what we do is through the council, the industry association. We have member companies who want to see Texas become the jurisdiction of choice for blockchain innovation. And so we're looking at several different bills. In fact, just last week, I was on the phone with the Texas Banking Commissioner, Charles Cooper, and I had no idea he would take my phone call, but he did. And he said, "Oh, I've heard of you. I've heard of the Texas Blockchain Council. You know, I talked to my counterpart in Wyoming, and they said that you guys are doing some stuff here, and we want to help." And that shocked me because I thought that they were going to be our opposition. I thought we were going to have to, weather some storms from at least the Texas Bankers Association or the Texas Banking Commission. Turns out, no, they've actually volunteered their general counsel to sit on some of our policy development research for the Uniform Commercial Code. And so it's,
so
yeah,
I think
I'm sort of going off on a tangent here, but
you should be very proud of that. You should be very proud of that.
Yeah.
That's due to your work. And anytime that you have a business that you call somebody and they already know of your business that you started, that's got to be a pretty good feeling. So congrats.
Well, thanks. I think it was just a fluke. I have no idea
Don't say
why or
that.
how.
Take the credit.
Yeah.
Well, we've got great member companies too. I mean, just tons of companies, Dallas, Houston, Austin. Dallas is our biggest presence. If you look at our website, the banner image is the Dallas skyline. So we're pursuing 4 different bills in the legislature, and they may be combined to 2 bills, 4 different initiatives, we'll call them. One is a working group bill for the Texas legislature. It would establish a 14-member working group, 2 members from higher education, 10 members from the private enterprise, and 2 members from the legislature that would advise the governor on how Texas should be researching and investing in blockchain. That bill was filed 2 years ago in the last session. It did not pass because it got out of committee unanimously, but we didn't get to it because of the high bill number it had and the issues with school finance in the legislature. Just was a busy session. So it actually didn't get a hearing on the floor. We're really confident, and our legislative partners are really confident, who also happen to be from the North Texas area. Tan Parker, Gio Capriglione, two strong sponsors for us who are going to sponsor these bills. And on the Senate side, we've got Senator Nelson in the Mid-Cities and Senator Johnson in Dallas. And we're nonpartisan, by the way. So, you know, the people I've mentioned, 3 of them are Republicans, 1 of them was a Democrat, but they're all working together to sponsor this legislation. So that's one bill. We're also looking at Texas blockchain service.
In this day and age, that's another feather in your cap that you should be proud of.
Yeah.
The bipartisan nature of things. Yeah. You know, I talked to them about that, and they said, you know, we're not as polarized here as we are in DC, and especially on issues of tech and, you know, emerging technology.
Yeah.
Now, if we were talking about something else on the social side, maybe a little bit more polarized, but we're going to find, actually, I think it's more of an urban-rural divide where a bunch of urban representatives support us because they see the increased investment, the tax base, all these things that could be flowing in, and they're not going to realize those gains as much in the rural areas of Texas. But, you know, I think once we tie in that energy piece that Stephen was talking about, and we talk about Bitcoin miners in Texas, Texas has a deregulated energy grid with some of the cheapest power, actually in spots the cheapest power in the country. That's why you're going to have more, you already have and will continue to have more Bitcoin mining here than anywhere else in the country. And I think even globally, we're going to increase our share. I think we're at like 14% right now in the US. Texas being a large part of that, we're going to go up, and it's going to be a large part because of Texas and the rural like Rockdale, Texas, losing jobs by the day. It's a very rural community. But a Bitcoin mine goes in, a couple of them, Layer 1 and others, in different spots when they can find cheap power, and they're adding hundreds and hundreds of jobs, $20 an hour, $30 an hour jobs in a community that has high unemployment, which and they're gaining a really cool skill, which is data center management, data center operations.
Yep.
So,
And that's something you can get to anywhere in the state now.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important. We saw this in Wyoming, just this idea of self-sovereign, identities and why it's important. I think there was a great momentum in Wyoming because of not on the technology side or the energy side, this idea of owning and controlling your own wealth, which I think appeals to many Texans, specifically in the rural areas, mindset and way of thinking.
Yeah. So, Lee, I do have a question on that. Have you seen any movement from the legislature on bills around small business? Because I can remember some of the difficulties in getting adoption for starting entrepreneurs is they may find this place like for instance, there's a lot of content creation platforms in the blockchain, and you can earn 1,000 times more than you can on YouTube. But if you're starting to pull in $2,000-$3,000 a month because of this content, it's all coming in through crypto, then tax and regulatory and everything else become daunting for a single operator. So is there any movement to kind of bring that into a more normalized, uniform, easy to use space?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before I answer, we should probably let Lacey give the disclaimer about tax advice and all that stuff. You're muted, but I'll give it for you. Nothing that we say can be construed as tax or investment advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
and always do your own research.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I would love to see something on that front. We're sort of there's two different categories here. Mm-hmm. On the tax side, we're gonna have to wait for the federal government to act, just because it's not as state centric. But on the security side, the Texas State Board of Securities, and on digital assets and things like that, we are seeing some movement there. I think the Texas State Securities Board has been really active in sending out cease and desist letters towards companies that are frauds, committing fraud. But that means that they're also educating themselves, and I think we want that. We don't want them to be overly aggressive, but we do want them to police bad actors.
Right.
And so they are educating themselves. The Dallas Fed is educating themselves, just like the Boston Fed is on the central bank digital currency side of things. But yeah, so on tax, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see that from a state level, but we can lobby. I mean, Texas has got a huge congressional delegation, and unfortunately, none of our Texas representatives are on the U.S. Blockchain Caucus. And so that's something we're trying to change. And if any of you guys have connections with congressmen and women at the national level, we need Texas members on the Blockchain Caucus to push for those kinds of things with the IRS, because we're not going to be able to affect that on the state level.
Oh, I think we lost Stephen. Okay. Production's working on that. And I see somebody wrote, they can hear me, but no other speaker. That's unfortunate because I'm the one asking questions. And to everyone on here listening, any questions, pop into the box, and we'll kind of hit those rapid fire at the end here.
Is my audio still coming through okay? Maybe it was okay. Michael said he can hear me. So Lacey, I can take this time to talk about some of the other bills if you want to. Yeah, so in addition to the working group bill, we're looking at some more aggressive bills. A blockchain service network bill similar to, the bill won't be similar because China does things by through dictatorship, but the idea is somewhat similar to the blockchain service network in China and the European service initiative. So EBSI is their acronym there. They're ahead of us, unfortunately, but I think we can catch up. We just need to get the public sector to realize the potential here. And one of the things I wanted to mention as far as like Dallas entrepreneurs is one of the things our organization is trying to do, and Stephen and Lacey are doing this as well in partnership and through their organizations, is trying to create more business opportunities for entrepreneurs and startups in Dallas and in Texas in general by getting the public sector involved in this industry, so that they're going to be, contracting out to companies in the area to conduct these kinds of implementations. And while I love Deloitte and Accenture and all these, the behemoths and IBMs, they already have a significant share of market share when it comes to Texas agencies contracting out, in this procurement process. And that's great. We want to keep those companies with a good share and investment in Texas, but we want to also include and make opportunities for small businesses that want to try to get in the procurement game and present a winning bid when an RFP comes out. So there's also some B2B stuff too. So if, client matching is big, and the NTBA did that, and we want to do that too. We want to make sure that our member companies know about each other, and we've already connected some companies where there's some B2B sales, business development, where somebody needed a service. It was a startup or maybe a mid-sized company, and then a startup had that service, and we connected them, and they're doing business.
So talk a little bit about that connectivity, what role you're playing there, and then really the RFP processes for those that are in the startup space, regardless if it's blockchain. Like, I'm assuming that they don't put out, we need a blockchain company to do this. It's like most blockchain companies just use blockchain to solve a problem. How does any startup go about these RFP processes, and is it something that they should spend time in seeing if they can solve the problem for?
That's a great question. I don't feel overly qualified to answer. I'll give an answer, and then I'll turn it over to Steven. He's got some more entrepreneurship experience than I do. But I would say unless your solution fixes a very clear need, don't spend any time on government RFPs. I mean, they're slow moving, they're slow to pay out, and they're challenging to navigate. But if you do have, they can be a very good long-term source of revenue if you have the right fix, the right tool for their problem. And if you can specifically hone in on an agency, like if you're doing blockchain for doctors' credentialing or medical records or something like that, and you can get to the Texas Department of Health and Human Services, and there's a niche there for medical credentialing for EMT drivers, like that could be a very profitable contract for many years to come. So it kind of depends on, so for most people, it's probably not worth your time, but unless you find that right niche, and then you sort of need to get a presence in Austin and make introductions to people. And that's what we're trying to do. Our organization is making introductions to agencies, and we don't lobby directly, but we can hire lobbyists based upon our organizational structure. And so sometimes that helps, smaller startups they can't hire lobbyists on their own, but if they join an industry association, they could benefit from some of that push. But I'm gonna defer to Stephen on the entrepreneurship side.
I'll actually add on to what you said. A lot of the industry groups are where, like, if you're a startup, you're going to find a lot of attraction in industry groups and in thought leadership around your solution. I would say for the blockchain space specifically, it is definitely going to be blockchain is part of your stack and your solution. It's not going to be the selling point. So, and especially if you're looking to do the RFP process, a lot of companies are going to look for known vendors that they can trust. So if you're starting out, you should get really familiar with the blockchain services coming out of AWS with Amazon, or the Azure service from Microsoft, because you're going to get that client request. And if you don't have that in RFP, it's going to get tossed out. And then you need to network, because if you go to the industry groups, if you're on conferences like this that have networking sessions and people are talking about solutions in that area that you're already serving. So like if it's data entry and cleanup, or if it's verifying transactions using hashing technology or something else, they're going to talk about that. And then if you're offering solutions and help and advice, that's going to get you in front of the people who can make that decision. And then the last part I would add is plug into your universities. So DBU, UTD, SMU, like those are going to be the places where people are looking for probably like a not so standard solution that might come through a startup. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be more open to like, yeah, I'm just trying to find a solution. I'm not specifically looking for a solution from a preferred vendor. So that's been my experience. I mean, at this point, I've done like 250 RFPs, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to put into there. You do get a template, but like you find people are not so much looking to be excited about the solution; they're looking for the solution. Yeah,
understandable. So that's some really great advice. Okay, so I want to talk about. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to talk about the future, just as it relates to our current conversation. Obviously, ICOs were a big thing. Most will say that ICO boom is sort of phased out. Right now, we're seeing DeFi, like decentralized finance. Leveraging is a really very big and very popular thing. Maybe, Stephen, do you want to take the first question? Explain to us what DeFi is, why it's important, how DeFi is different from what we've had before cryptocurrencies and smart contracts.
So I see DeFi as the next logical progression to part of the ICO hype and just the uses that people initially found for crypto. So like initially, people saw crypto as another way of figuring out how to pay and transact across jurisdictions and environments when you didn't really know who the people were. So the next thing out from that, and I think this has been informed a lot by the movements in the fintech space, is versions of investing, versions of doing loans and other financial products and instruments that you were going to do anyway, but in the traditional space, same way with like your Charles Schwab account used to have minimum share buys. Well, with Robinhood, there are no minimum share buys. They've gone into fractionalized shares. So DeFi gives you another avenue for doing that in the crypto space. And I think for the industry as a whole, crypto has always been trying to find its correct speed, right? So initially it was like, hey, there was nothing here. And then we got this decentralized component. So we had more transaction access and cross-border stuff, but it was slow. So now people were like, we got to go fast. And I think initially, especially in the ICO world, they tried to go so fast that there was no real business value prop in between. Like, if I'm an intermediary or if I'm providing a service and it happens so quickly that someone basically commoditized me to email, then why would I ever build a business on top of that? And so DeFi gives you that in between where it slows it down enough where there'd be a business case, but it's still faster than everything else that you would be using in the traditional sense. And so I think it's that next middle ground progression before we get like something close to mass adoption. But DeFi is definitely going to add that next wave of adoption that people thought was coming in 2017.
Lee, do you have anything to add to that on your side? Are you seeing any legislative change, anything that you guys are targeting based on current events?
Yeah, so I just typing out a quick message on the chat to link anybody up if they're interested. A Texas-based company called Interaxis is a TBC member. They're traditional finance guys, but they the last couple of years have been DeFi evangelists, and they do education and videos and all sorts of stuff. So if anybody wants to get connected with them, listen to their podcast, or maybe you're in the DeFi space and you want to be on their podcast, like just definitely let me know and we'll put my email in chat and we'll get you connected to them.
And
so,
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, someone wrote, considering how I can offer include it on my platform. Any words of wisdom?
I would say initially start small, like use DeFi in like maybe 1 or 2 cases. So for instance, let's take an e-commerce platform. If you can allow people to basically like set up a layaway or credit system inside, and they can use DeFi for that, where they can be borrowing against some crypto that they have, or they can get a loan from crypto platform, like don't make them set up their own infrastructure, but enable it through your service and you manage it on that side. That's going to be the quickest way to test it out and see how it works for yourself, because as long as your customer experience is good, people want to keep using it, but you don't want to have such a good customer experience tied into a really manual management process that then means that you have to get a lot of people or spend a lot of time in doing that, because that can sink your business. It's the same as like trying to sell to a company that doesn't make decisions for 2 years. Well, you can't wait 2 years to get paid. Unless, I mean, if you can, great, but in most cases you can't. So I would say start small and then scale it out, as opposed to trying to include everything in DeFi, because maybe you are eventually going to use all those services, but you don't want to spend them all up at once. And companies change in this space really quickly. So the guys you might be using today may be gone in 6 months, or there might be a better option that comes out. You don't want to be so deep into an integration that you're now single point of failure.
Lee, anything to add?
No, I think Stephen covered it. Oh, well, I do have one thing. I mean, I've heard it both ways. I've heard people say DeFi, and I've heard DeFi. I've always said DeFi. That's seems to be, but I don't know. Yeah, let's solve it for the world right now. What are we gonna go with, DeFi or DeFi?
It's the blockchain. So as Paige pointed out.
The blockchain. Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, Stephen, you're the expert.
I would say I would say probably DeFi, because similar to fintech, you're splitting two words and combining them together. So that's my American Standard English like sentence.
Perfect. DeFi. And I would also say to, as always, as I say, as a lawyer, money, get a lawyer to make sure that you are not running afoul of any state or federal laws, because they are out there, and it is, very prevalent to be in trouble for something like that, and at all costs avoid having a call with the State Securities Board or the SEC.
Yeah.
I guess at all costs avoid them calling you. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. I don't see any questions. It's very opinionated on DeFi. I will adjust my vocabulary about it, and think of you often when I do. Okay, what else, Lee? What's something you want this group to know about what you're doing, what's important to you in this space? What do you want them to leave with?
So I think we have a limited window in Texas, and I guess this is pretty Dallas centric too, because I see Dallas as, right up there with Austin as the hub for Texas and for this technology. We've got a limited window to make a big splash on the national stage as far as public policy is concerned. I think if we can have some wins at the public policy level, the amount of marketing and the amount of interest and eyeballs that will come to Texas is going to be a lot higher. So elections are in November. We can start filing bills the day after the elections. Session starts in January. That gives us a few short months to really pile on the momentum and to let legislators know that we can't just focus on COVID this legislative session. City councils and local governments and the Texas state government are going to be tempted to do just that. And that's really just surviving. We want to thrive. So thriving looks like recognizing we've got to do some COVID stuff, and we've got to, stem the bleeding there, but we can't just only do that. So we need to make a big splash so that investment comes to Texas. The more venture capital and more Texas, the more business in the space, and the more startups will, the higher number of startups will actually succeed and be able to thrive. So connect with the community in Dallas, whether that's the three of us or Hamza, Michael, the TVC as well. So follow us on Twitter, go to our website, and just log into our monthly calls. We have a monthly call. The legislator will give some remarks. Some of our member companies will explain what they're doing. And if you've got contacts in Texas government, or a legislator, or a senator, a state senator, then tell them that you want to see them vote in a pro blockchain way and make Texas the jurisdiction of choice for for blockchain innovation.
Cool. Stephen, I'm giving you 30 seconds. What do you want us to know?
Go out, try a lot of things, because you never know what's going to be important, but every bit of knowledge that you earn in this space, it will be exponentially valuable as the years go by. Like, my entire career is built on that. Everything I learn keeps being more valuable every single day. So there's no better time to start than today.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I thank you guys so much. You have both been great mentors to me. Lee, what you're doing for the startups, in this space, in this state, is very, very important. I know, because I work with you personally, how much personal work that you put into that. And I am very thankful for it. And I think the rest of the community is as well. So please continue that. And Stephen, thank you so much you always have such great words of wisdom about startups and investing in yourself, and really this entrepreneurial spirit that keeps Dallas Startup Week, blockchain, the evolution of crypto, the evolution of Dallas continuing to grow, and those underlying rivers really of information and support are so important to keep everyone moving. So I appreciate both of you guys, and I hope that we can see each other in person someday soon.
Yeah.
And Lacey, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Lacey, for moderating.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right.